Hey everyone, welcome to episode 44 of the Sarah's podcast. In this episode, we talk to Gregg Howard from Our Plaice in Hagley and the Chip Shed, which operates from multiple locations in Warwickshire and the Cotswolds. In my opinion, this is a really great episode, and to give everyone a little bit of background information, I've known Gregg for about 14, maybe 15 years. But in this episode, it's evident that although I know Gregg, I know nothing about Gregg. And as you listen to this episode, you'll understand what I mean. Gregg is not only a previous Fish and Chips of the Year winner, but he also was the president of the National Federation of Fish Friers for about 6 years, give or take. I do think it's fair to say that me and Gregg haven't always seen eye to eye on everything, and we probably won't moving forward. However, we've always really respected each other, and in my view, that's how great relationships are formed. Gregg and his family have devoted a lot of their time to the industry, and they probably still have a lot more to give. For those of you who are new to the Sarah's podcast and don't know who pays for the bills, then head over to worldofsarahs.com. Recently, we posted a new question time feature with Mark Savage from the Weatherby Whaler Group, and we've updated a spotlight article with Andrew Kalea from the Clopton Catch in Stratford-upon-Avon. A little note on last week's episode with Aphrodite. We're really pleased with all the positive comments. It seems like everybody wants to implement a new look to their restaurant now. Sorry about all the talk. Now on to episode 44 with Gregg Howard. Enjoy. Gregg Howard, welcome to the Sarah's podcast.
Thank you, Stelios.
So for those that don't know you, you are the co-owner of Our Plaice in Hagley and the co-owner of the Chip Shed, which operates from 3 outlets around Warwickshire and the Cotswolds. Many won't know, but we first met in the early 2000s. I think we met before this, but we held a Midlands event. I don't know if you remember that. And
Go on.
Yeah, and I think it might have been your winning year or the year after. I'm not sure it was around that time. It was me, Mike Pilley, you, Mark Petru, quite a few of us. But it's odd that many issues that were raised in that meeting are still present today. They're still an issue today, which is...
Was that at the Greek...
That's it.
In Erdington?
That's the one, big Greek church.
Okay.
And but I'd like to say that I think that it's fair to note that over the years we haven't always agreed on everything.
No, indeed. Why should we?
Yeah, but I do think that we've always respected each other.
Correct.
And I think that's the key thing. And I find it's impossible for everyone to agree anyway, but I'd prefer it if they didn't agree because it makes us all stronger, you know, really passing out these different ideas and making them better, if you get what I mean.
No, absolutely. Everybody sees things from a different perspective, don't they?
Definitely. But I'm just glad you're here. We both respect each other and we can have a chat about all this.
I'm looking forward to it.
So give us a little bit of background. How did you get into fish and chips?
Well, it's a bit like when you listen to other people that you've interviewed on the podcast, you know, I'm second generation from a family-run business, you know. It was my mum, actually, that started the business. And it was a bit peculiar how she fell into, how the family fell into fish and chips because they bought a house and it was an old farmhouse and consequently in the front room of the house there was a frying range. Oh, wow. It was an old Walker and Hustler coal-fired frying range and... my mum just kept looking at it and she saw a business opportunity. She didn't want to rip it out the front room, so she went ahead and literally started frying fish and chips in 1968. I mean, there was no such thing as portion control then. It was sort of a whale's arse and a bucket of chips, you know. No microwaves, no electronic tills. It was coal-fired. So we had some great fun, really, as a kid because if ever there was a power cut, no electricity, nobody could cook. Mum literally put a load of tea lights on top of the frying range and away we went, you know, coal-fired so we could produce food.
Yeah.
So whenever there was an electricity power cut, it was great because we were really, really busy. And as I say, it was the front room of the house. But very quickly, my dad saw the opportunity to obviously make money and at the time, Dad's background, his granddad, my granddad, his father, they had television and radio shops in and around the West Midlands, over in Darlaston and areas of Birmingham. He had a big fallout with my dad, you know, as you do, granddad and son.
Yeah.
So Dad sort of went on his own, and he did credit drapery business. This was pre sort of catalogues where it was called on the tick then. So he'd go around and take money off people per week for clothes, and in the daytime he drove a lorry. I can still remember going with him, and we used to deliver sacks and all sorts of things over the Black Country. But Mum started to make some money, operating the fish and chip shop from the front room. So he got involved, and they ran it for about 18 months, 2 years, and then the local fish and chip shop a couple of streets away came up for sale. So Dad bought that. They closed down the fish and chip shop in the front room of the house and turned it back into living accommodation. And Mum always quipped that we had more people in our front room than anybody else in the street, type of thing. So, but Dad, they started running it then, and it was proper old fashioned. Then Stelios, it was wet fish in the morning, and fried fish from midday. So in effect, Dad was a fishmonger in the morning, okay. And then he'd fry whatever was left over. And he had a wet fish stall in a shop, and then he had a separate fish and chip shop. This was in the 1970s. It was hilarious, really, when you think about it now. He'd have a cigarette on the go next to the cutting board, next to the batter, and he'd be smoking. And then he'd go up into the shop, and where he fried from in the shop, he'd have another cigarette, and he'd move from one to the other, having a drag, and then put the cigarette out. I mean, you couldn't imagine it now, could you? We're a million miles away from that. So
I'd imagine it's alien to them now, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it was a very simple business. There was no microwaves. There was one hot box that we had that you could keep food hot in. People would come in and they'd bring a bowl, and you put mushy peas into the bowl for them, and they'd take it away. I mean, curry sauce was exotic then; it was not heard of.
Foreign muck.
Absolutely. I mean, when he was alive, he maintained that he invented the battered sausage. I remember him doing it the one day, and I was just thinking, there you go. Yeah. So,
do you think back then it was literally just fish, chips, peas?
Yeah.
And obviously the battered sausage, which was invented. Yeah.
Chicken, a quarter of chicken. But very, very little all else, really. I mean, we hadn't got a microwave, so we couldn't do a hot pie. That quickly changed. Yeah, he bought a microwave that was like the size of, a microwave now was double the size. It was ridiculous, really, the size of the blooming thing. So, but what Dad did do was he, very early on in the early 80s, he started using frozen at sea fish. And it was it came in brown packaging. It was a German vessel. It was 190s, 191s, 192s. That was the different size of the fish. He was lucky. He asked his supplier at the time, who was buying it from Birmingham Market, where he got it from. And I remember Doug, who Dad bought it off. He told Dad foolishly where he bought it from, which was F. Smales and Sons in Hull. So Dad got on the phone, found him in the phone directory, spoke to Smales, and then from then on in, early 80s, that's what we did. We're in the Midlands, we're landlocked, trying to get fresh fish from Birmingham Market. Well, you and I know it's only fresh at certain times, really. It's
I suppose being in Birmingham back then with the old networks, probably would have been getting it on day 6 or 7, wouldn't you, really? Yeah. Well, that's being optimistic, I think.
Very.
Yeah.
I mean, I did used to go into market in his old Morris Marina van, 5 o'clock in the morning, do Birmingham Market, buy all the fish. I mean, one of the first jobs I had was we used to buy hake, whole fish, take the head off, take the tail off, cut it into rings. That was my job,
So what made you come into the fish and chip business? Like, did you not feel like you wanted to do something else, or? Well,
I did do something else. Dad was of the opinion that I should go and work for somebody else just to see how tough it was, and I did. I was always going to go into food, so my very first job was I worked in a canteen in a factory in the morning, and we used to do the breakfast and the lunches, and then I'd go around the factory on an afternoon and clean all the vending machines. It was hard work, We're going into an incandescent to a furnace, and there was probably about an inch of soot on top of this vending machine, and then you got some big burly metal worker walk up to me and say he'd lost 5 pence in the machine and demanding a free drink, And I was looking at him, a bit wet behind the ears, and obviously I'd give him a free drink. The only good side of it was I got to go around all the offices as well, so some of the young office girls were great. Yeah, but
those were the days, eh?
Happy days, yeah. But I did. So I went to went off to college and did City and Guilds at 706 1 and 2, day release. Worked in a couple of restaurants. I enjoyed it. It was great. It was hard work. Met a young guy who I worked with from the Plough and Harrow in Birmingham. At the time, that was just a fantastic restaurant. And Sid went to college with Sid. He was there just to get a certificate, really. He knew what he was doing, and bechamel sauces. He was making them all day long. We were learning how to do it. So it was very, very different, really. But ultimately, I think I always knew that I'd go back and work for Dad. And that's what we did. He used to close on a Tuesday and shut early on a Saturday night. And we just said one day, we said, look, if we can make enough money on the Tuesday and the Saturday night to go towards my wages, I'll be happy with that. And that was probably, I'd say, about 1983. And while I was at college in Hagley, there was a site there that was absolutely prime site for a fish and chip shop. And I said to him, just go and have a look at it, Dad. This was probably 1984. And we sold the shop that we'd got. And then we managed to buy the freehold of the new shop, get planning permission. And we invested, I think, £87,000 at the time. It's a hell of a lot of money.
Wow.
The frying range was a £4 Middleton's frying range, probably about 15,000 quid for a frying range. But the total spend was 87 grand, and we calculated that we need to take the 1,350 quid to make it pay. So the first week we took about £1,100, and we were looking at each other thinking, what have we done? It was, oh my God. But very quickly we were taking 1,500 quid, £2,000. Back then in the mid-80s, there's no McDonald's, there was no Burger King, no KFC. There was probably one Chinese, one Indian restaurant. We had the lion's share. I mean, it was almost like a license to print money because there were no other takeaways.
And do you think, people had simpler tastes back then as well, didn't they? They didn't want sort of the spiciness back then, I suppose, did they?
No, it wasn't as popular as what it is now. It was, you had a fish and chip shop, and as I say, when we opened, it was all brand new, all singing, all dancing, and it was, excuse the pun, it was the place to go. Dad was very passionate about what he did. He ran a really good business.
What was it like working with your dad, would you say?
Oh, it was great. Really enjoyed it.
Was there a lot to be learnt, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when you work with your dad, I mean, a lot of my friends, you talk to them, they don't really know the parents as such like that because they're obviously doing different things, different jobs. You haven't got that bond. You probably got the same thing with your dad, But back then, I mean, I worked with him for a couple of years, and then I was determined to get my own shop. So we looked, and we bought a shop about 5 miles away in 1988, and I ran that shop for it was a week short of 15 years. Ran it till 2003, and in that time we brought up 4 children, and it afforded us a decent living style. We made enough money to buy a house, and I concentrated then on doing property up. We bought and sold houses quite well, ran the business, like I say, for 15 years. But ultimately, I always knew that it was about location, really. To do a good product, you've got to have the right audience, or you do an inferior product maybe for the right audience. You fill people up. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to do a quality product. So ultimately, I knew that I needed to have the right location to do it from.
So in some ways, you just realised early on that, or through experience, that you needed to go where the customers were, not wait for them to come to you, essentially.
That's right. I mean, at the time, the better customers that we had, the ones that spent more money actually came in from out the area. It was the black country where the shop was. It was a hard area. It's working class. There was lots of factories. I mean, my mum's family background, where they were chain makers. That's what they did.
Yeah.
It was bloody hard graft. I remember seeing my uncle stood in front of a furnace, with literally a leather apron on, and he was hammering and forging out steel, making chain. You know, I mean, how hard's that? He got pints of tea, literally cold tea lined up, because he was dehydrating that quickly that he'd drink pint after pint after pint.
I suppose in some ways you've seen the change of the location happen around you as well, haven't you? If you're saying you remember that generation, that doesn't happen as much anymore, does it? There's no chain makers around anymore, is there? There's none of that industrial...
Not like it was then. There's the few niche people that still do things now, make stampings and pressings in the Black Country, and you can go and get things manufactured still, which is great for us. If you want a stainless steel table made, you can go and get it made, you know. But no, it's changed. It's where Round Oak Steelworks was. It's now a shopping centre. It's quite bizarre, really. It still employs the same amount of people, but they're doing different things, aren't they? They're working in food retail and retail shops and so on and so forth.
It's a less laborious job, isn't it? Probably still on their feet for just as long, just not hammering. And so you spent 5 years working with your dad, 15 years in your site, and then that's then when you opened Our Plaice in Hagley, was it?
Yeah, Our Plaice in Hagley, 2000. We opened in 2004. What it was, Stelios, I moved to a little village called Clent, where we live now, and that's right alongside the village of Hagley. So I used to go in and use the bank every week, and I just kept looking, thinking this is such an affluent area. There's no fish and chip shop, and I knew people had tried to get planning permission, but I did my homework. Nobody had ever actually taken it to an appeal. So I just thought, well, if we take it to an appeal, we've got half a chance because nobody's done it before. And depending on what they turn it down on, you can appeal against that. So I put my money where my mouth was, and we rented a shop empty. The shop we're in now, we rented it empty for about 9 months because we applied for planning permission. The parish council supported it. Unfortunately, the district council didn't, so they turned it down, and they turned it down on parking and smell. So, you know, parking wasn't an issue, and smell could be got round with carbon filters and so on and so forth. So we were all on holiday, and we were really disappointed. We had the phone call to say that we hadn't got planning permission, and then we put the appeal in, and that took 3 or 4 months. And somebody comes out from Bristol, from the planning inspectorate, and they're totally impartial. They look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, you know. So they're looking at Hagley and saying, well, actually, it hasn't got a takeaway, which it didn't have. It had one Indian restaurant, that was it. So there was a need and there was a use. And after 9 months, they granted planning permission. But at that point, I probably put about £20,000 in rent and for a town planner. You know, I really did put my money where my mouth was, and I started to panic a bit because I just thought, oh my God, if I don't get planning, I've, wasted all this money. But, so we got planning, and we did like a state-of-the-art shop. We just took inspirations not from other fish and chip shops, particularly from cafeterias, from restaurants. We'd always like Art Deco anyway. So that was the sort of theme we were always going to go down, with the style, with the look, with the chrome fittings, I mean, over the years in the 1970s, I've seen Formica. Orange was the popular colour back then, and then it went to blues, and then blues in the 1970s, 80s, and then to greens, and then to black, really, which was the colour that we used alongside the chrome. So you watch fish and chips, the chops, the colour schemes have changed with the time, with the decade, perhaps. So, 2003, we opened in 2004, completely revamped the shop. It was a carpet shop, and before that it was fruit and veg stall, and before that it was, a woolen shop, So we changed the use. We were absolutely delighted with it. And we wanted to give Hagley and the people of the surrounding areas something very special, something to be proud of, and we did. I think at that point, we'd always been members of the NFFF, but at that point I'd started taking a bit more notice on trade magazines and what was happening and who was entering the competitions, looking at people like from the Peterborough area, Martin Bunning, Steve Goodacre, that had won the competition and what it had done for them, reading about, what the competition had done for their business. So it all fitted in nicely with opening a brand new shop, thinking, well, actually, if you're going to do it now. Yeah. Do it while everything's brand new, while the fridge seals are perfect, and and so on. And I don't know what made me go down that route of the competition. We'd already done a quality award, which was great. But I just thought it fitted in with the timing of opening a new shop, and we entered pretty much in that first year, 2003, 2003. And we got through to the top 20, and I thought, my God, I can't believe this. So I was delighted but frustrated at the same time. I was anxious to get my feedback because I thought I couldn't really see where we'd gone wrong, because the product was great, the shop was great, customer service was brilliant. So I thought we were up against a shop called Rose Avenue Fish Bar in Worcester. So I went over to see them. Knocked on the guy's door and said, congratulations, well done, you got to the final, good luck. Really nice shop as well. So I wasn't too disheartened because they were a good shop. If it would have been an average shop run badly with a poor product, I'd have gone, well, this doesn't seem fair. So, it wasn't our time either. It wasn't perhaps our year.
Do you remember who won that year?
It was Finnegan's.
Finnegan's, yeah.
Yeah,
Nice
Finnegan's. So, yeah, going back to Our Plaice. So we opened that shop there 2004, 3, 4. The following year we entered Fish and Chip Shop of the Year again. And we progressed through, got into the top 20 again. And then I looked at the calibre of people we were up against. And I just thought, oh, my God, it's George's Tradition. We're up against in the top 20. There were shops like Hanbury's that I'd been to visit. It was just fantastic. Seniors up in Blackpool, amazing again. And back then, Stelios, what you had to do to enter, you had to do like 300 slips, And we didn't cherry pick. We chose regular customers, obviously, but we didn't cherry pick who they were, and we didn't know what we'd get back. Somebody had a bad day; they were going to give you a pretty shitty.
Well, it was your fault, clearly.
Clearly, yeah. If they'd had a bad day, you were going to get a bad score, But we guarded these with our lives, We wanted to put 300 back in, and I was at the time. It was all or nothing for me. I was just so into it. It was just consumed me. So for the 9 months of entering in the second year, every day, every night, 6 days a week, I was behind the counter. I wanted to cook every portion of fish and chips and stand over and make sure that we got everything absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And it was great because when Seafish came back in and judged in the second year, they could see that we'd improved the shop. We'd white rocked all the areas downstairs where we stored the product. So when they came back the second year, they could see that we hadn't stood still. And it wasn't so much of me telling them what we were going to do. We'd already done it.
Yeah.
So they were really, really pleased.
So who did they still do mystery shops back then?
Yeah, mystery shops. And again, you've got to do your homework and think it through. So I'm in the shop, and when we were judged to get into the top 10, obviously Seafish are based in Scotland. We're in a little village on the outskirts of Worcestershire, bordering on the West Midlands, and this Scottish guy walked in, and I thought, okay, what are the chances, And it was Andy Gray. I didn't know Andy Gray. For those of you who don't know Andy runs the competition, one of the main people that run the competition for Seafish. So I'm looking at this guy, and I said, oh, you're not local then, obviously. And he was squirming a bit. But Caroline's mum is from Edinburgh, so I just thought, I'll just talk to him about Scotland, and he was waiting for his cod and chips to be cooked anyway. So I just thought I'll just make him squirm, and I asked him loads of questions. Oh, what are you doing down here? Are you visiting somebody, or are you just passing through? Which is that's a load of bollocks. Nobody passes through Hagley. It's just out on a limb, really. So I just knew when he took the product away, he bought 3 portions of fish and chips. It was literally like, this is it, game on. In 10 minutes' time, he's going to come back in and he's going to walk through the shop and he's going to want to scrutinise it all. So I got a big heads up on that, which was great. And sure enough, Andy came back in, said, I'm Andy Gray from Seafish, which I thought was hilarious. Like, he said, you knew, didn't you? And I said, yeah, just a little bit, a bit of a giveaway. So, we made it through to the top 10 in London, and it was like, oh my God, it was weird, really. It was just, we didn't know anything about it. We didn't know how many people would be in the room. We didn't know, anything. All I knew was the previous winners. And so you try and do your homework, don't you? You know, you look at the companies of who was doing the packaging at the time, and it was a company called Limpack. So I thought, well, they'll have a judge on there. There'll be somebody from FASFA, the Frozen at Sea Fillets Association. So you look and you do your homework with that. There'll be somebody from the NFFF, who was the chairman at the time, or president at the time, rather. So I knew who that would be. You've really got to put yourself in the best position to try and win this thing. So I really did my groundwork. I knew also as well, when it came to the final, that I couldn't do it. You know, that would be where Caroline would have to come in. And, you know, she's the marketing expert, if you like. She's the one with the, you know, the sort of, the next level of being able to put yourself over and speak eloquently in front of other people. I just thought, oh my God, I'll just get to pieces. Like, shit myself.
I suppose she's less Frier and more marketing, like you say, to some degree. She's more customer facing in that respect.
Yeah. So between the two of us, it actually worked. I mean, she managed to get us over the finish line. You know, she wrote the presentation. We entitled it "Past, Present, and Future." So what I'm doing now, really, we just told the story. Yeah. You know,
it's interesting that you got that far as well, because I think back then there was a really big issue with those slips. You know, I remember when I first entered the awards one year, one shop that had entered told me, "Oh, you don't give it customers, do you?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, you do, don't you?" And they were like, "No, I just sit there with a phone book and just fill them out."
That's right.
And I think that's why
change the pen as well.
Yeah, change the pen. Use
different handwriting, left hand and right hand. Yeah.
And I think the year after that they got rid of it. Then at that point, and we're probably thinking 2006, 2007, maybe.
Yeah, a bit later on. I mean, it's like anything. You have to keep. It's keeping the entrance on the toes as well. You know, it can't be the same every year in, year out.
You can't have box ticking, can you?
There is a little bit of that about it, but no, you have to shake it up a bit. I like this style now where you don't have two winners from one area, or you couldn't have, you know, you could have two winners from Wales and maybe two from the Midlands and none from up north or whatever. So it gives people a better chance.
What was it like winning back then? Like, it's slightly different pace now, I'd imagine, but still just as exciting, no doubt.
It was truly amazing. You know, from my own point of view as a businessman, we had people coming up and, you know, we've got customers there that got multi-million-pound businesses that just absolutely fantastic business people. Yet they were looking at me in awe. It's quite weird.
Okay.
You know, because you'd won a national award, and that's what it was. It was the national award. It elevated us to another level, really. Still, you know, it was in that year we had a fantastic time. We just we went on television. So we did Ready, Steady, Cook. We did another programme called Mind Your Own Business, which was like a boot camp thing. Went on the BBC Midlands Today. And actually we went on and met the Queen as well, which was just a bit special in itself. There aren't many people that can say that.
Amazing, because it all comes from a humble fish and chip shop.
That's right.
You know, it's not some... You know, it's not a Formula One team. It's not a Michelin-star restaurant. No. You know, a lot of people just walk past the chip shop sometimes and go, "It's a chippy." Yeah. Look at what you did from that.
Yeah, it was amazing. Because, you know, we became the best at what we did. We really put Hagley on the map. And not only were we the best at what we did, English people, British people are the best at fish and chips. So technically, we are the best in the world, aren't we? That's it. You know, we're not.
Many would argue.
Correct. Yeah. They might, but we are. I mean, you know, Britain is famous for a few things, and one of those is fish and chips. It's our signature dish.
And I suppose in some ways it's recognition because, you know, you've tried to stick to the traditionalness of fish and chips. You know, you do beef dripping and all of that, don't you? And your new sites don't really do kebabs, and you've really tried to just focus on that core product, haven't you?
We have, keep it simple. I mean, it's difficult to, you know, I listen to restaurateurs, other people that you've had on the podcast, and you have to give people what they want. You can't just narrow it down to a slick of 4 or 5 items, you know. We do different variations of fish. We've got lemon sole, haddock, plaice, hake, langoustine, scampi, obviously cod. You know, we do a variation of, but you've got to give them what they want. And if, like the shop at Hagley, it does do kebabs, and so we should as well. It's what's expected of a fish and chip shop where it is. The other sites are down in the Cotswolds and, completely different areas. Down there, they have kebab shops and they have fish and chip shops. They don't particularly have a fish and chip shop that does kebabs.
Yeah.
So you've got to adapt to where you are at, and it's all very well people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't diverse too much and become a takeaway." I agree with that. You should stick to what you know and do it really, really well. But why not do really good kebabs and really good fish and chips?
Yeah, as long as your goal is to do them as best as you can, then there shouldn't be a problem, should there? Really?
No, it's all about doing it quality, mate.
Yeah.
Quality food.
What was the transition like between working for your dad and then sort of going it alone?
Yeah, I mean, it's natural progression, isn't it? You want to prove to yourself that you can do it on your own and run a business from start to finish, doing the paperwork, doing the bookwork, looking after staff, ordering, making money. I mean, for years, Stal, the smaller shop we bought in 1988 that I ran for 15 years, I lived in the shadow of my dad, really, because his shop was huge. It was on a corner plot. It got its own parking. It was well established. But, at the same time, it made me more determined to prove to him and myself that I could run a business. And at that time, we ran a business well. As I say, it was just shy of 1 week shy of 15 years. And I remember saying to the customers, I felt like I was being taken for granted there because, we were producing good food, decent food, selling it at a reasonable amount of price, But I remember saying to the one guy, I says, "You're going to miss me when I'm gone from this shop, And this customer, he followed me to the new shop in Hagley, and he said, "You know what, Greg?" He said, "You're absolutely right." And week in, week out, he used to come, and he still does come, and buy his food because, it was a very small terrace shop on a B road in the Black Country. We did well from it, but it was never going to be a huge shop. We didn't have any space to expand at all. It was a little terrace building. It was 2 rooms deep, so you couldn't go sideways, backwards, or extend upwards. But yeah, I mean, it was a great learning curve. It's where I really cut my teeth to learn how to run a business, and it just stood me in great stead for moving on to Hagley and opening the Our Plaice there.
I suppose in some ways, the good thing with you is that you probably learned a lot of your mistakes with your dad, so you probably didn't have as many. Well, I'm sure there was, but other mistakes, obviously. But you sort of moving on to the next place for 15 years, you sort of got a chance to make some mistakes there as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, indeed. He'd always got the product style. He'd got a great ability to cook really good food, Dad had. He always fried at the right temperatures, made consistently good batter, decent portions, not stupid. So we made money. We were doing a 6-ounce fish at the time, and we made good money. We weren't doing big portions of food that people took home and shared. It was a meal for one person. I learnt a lot from him, how to behave behind the counter, how to do things, when chips start to discolour, through the cooking process, and you're thinking, what do I do now? Do I soak them back in water? Do I wash them off? Do I turn the temperature up? Do I turn the temperature down? And having that ability to be able to remix batter to get it to the right consistency, it might have thinned down too much or thickened up, or it was made too thick initially. So for people that don't understand fish and chips that are listening to this, you have to be able to and have the ability to rectify things as you're going along. Things can be good, but you can make the product even better just by doing simple things. It might be, as I say, adjusting the frying range up a touch or down a touch to suit the type of potato that you're frying.
Yeah, and I think what's important there is that your dad was probably, and you to some degree, was the generation of the fryer that's using their intuition. The skill has formed from mistakes and obviously just doing it right and learning that it's a constant moving field. The state of perfection is constant. It's a rolling thing, isn't it? Because your oils change and your batter changes. Everything's constantly on the move, and it's how you get the product right when everything is on the move.
That's right. Yes, I mean, one thing that Dad didn't do, and I don't know how we managed to do it for years and years and years. We never used filtration. We got something called a Cox's microfilter, which was like a bag on a frame, a metal frame, and we used to sift that through the pan. And it got out quite a lot of the carbon particles, but nothing like what the ability of a Bitterling or a Merlin or built-in filtration does now. At the time, removing the carbon from a pan was you chucked another bucket of chips in.
It's a magnet, isn't it? Chips just stick to it.
You don't see that now.
Customers wouldn't have minded that so much then. I think customers have evolved to want a very sort of, a blemish-free chip. So I'd imagine that carbon on chips today would be like anathema almost,
Indeed. I mean, that's our challenge now is, if you look at the McDonald's concept, what we try and do now is we're trying to produce the same product over and over and over again and replicate it time and time and time again. It's difficult because we're using a seasonal, fresh product out the ground. As you say about the state of oils, they can quickly break down for whatever reason. So it's having that ability when you can just drop a pan on a filter and filter a pan mid-service now. It's giving you the ability to do that, to create a more consistent product that is blemish-free.
Yeah.
You don't see little speckles on chips anymore. You don't have skin on fish and bone-in fish anymore. It's all a nice, clean product that you could almost eat with your eyes closed,
Yeah. I think it's a shame because I did actually miss. I don't miss crap on chips, but I do miss skin on haddock. I think.
I mean, we still serve it with the skin on. I think partly comes from the fact that you can identify it in a pan. It's it just seems to be. I would imagine that's where it's come from. I think that is what it is, and I actually like haddock with skin on. Prefer my cod without skin, and everything obviously needs to be boneless.
What would your dad have been like about the awards?
Well, he was there with me still.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. When we won, we'd invited Michael Pilley and his wife Rowena. My mum and dad were there, and 3 members of staff, Caroline and myself. So it was a real proud moment for me having him there.
How would he have looked at it? Did he see? How can I explain it? Did he look at the awards and think that's a good achievement? Because he probably wouldn't have been an award enterer, if you get what I mean.
No, he wasn't. No, he was a bit cynical, really, about certain things. It was almost like when he looked at the NFFF and they were all lined up with the medals round them, and he said, "Oh, look at me." He said, "Muttley, give me a medal, give me a medal." Dad was really good, but it was all sort of word of mouth, parochial. We're the best at what we do in our area, and that was good enough for him, and that was fine.
He didn't ever think nationally. For him, it was just locally, I guess.
No, very much so locally. But as I say, he was there with me when we won Fish and Chip Shop of the Year. It was a very proud moment. It was great for him. It was.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
So, do you ever see yourself entering the awards again?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, why not? Why would you not? Yeah. It's for anybody that's listening to this that owns a fish and chip shop, why on earth would you not be a member of the NFFF? Why would you not have a quality award? Why would you not get involved in the Fish and Chip Shop of the Year competition? I can tell you categorically that you can put 10%, 15%, up to 50%, 60% on top of your business. How on earth? How could you possibly do that? What could you do how you could do that? Unless you're really lucky and the council decide to build 300 houses right next door to your fish and chip shop, or something incredible happens. I can't think of any other way other than marketing your business through entering those awards.
So there's just no downsides in your view?
No, none whatsoever. Well, the only downside is well, if you can't take criticism, don't enter them.
Yeah.
And you can take criticism as criticism, or you can take it as honest feedback, and you can get your feedback and improve on it. You have to look at yourself. It's a funny old trade, this is what we're in. When I first started getting involved with the NFFF and speaking to other fish friers, I really thought, my God, there are other people out there that do the same job as me, because it is a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, who would want to work Friday and Saturday nights, unsociable hours, not be able to go for it? I never had a bloody fortnight holiday. I I think when we got married, we went away for 2 weeks. And then I've probably had one other 2-week holiday. And then when I was 50, I had another 2-week holiday. So to most people, they just think, well, that's like absolutely crazy. I mean, my mates at the time, when I was in my 20s, they say, "You're going to come out tonight, Greg?" I said, "I can't, I'm working." And that's what you did.
Yeah,
you know,
which is normal.
I remember booking a holiday once, and my dad said, "I said to him, I wasn't going away on holiday." He said, "No, you're not." He said, "You can cancel that."
In his generation, looking back, wouldn't have done holidays like that.
No, he waited, mate. One of his favourite saying was, "I might not be a millionaire, but I'll always live like one," and he did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He circumnavigated the world on cruise ships when he retired. He really went for it. Yeah, had a great time.
So one of the things I don't know if you've heard it yet, but the podcast we did with Tim and Kelly, I think it was episode 41. Tim was saying that he feels like the award should be less so an award and more so, let's say, like a league title, and it's something you can defend. Like, how do you feel about that?
No, I don't agree with that. I think that you shouldn't enter the following year. You should allow other winners to come through. If you win it, you should never try and defend it. Some people put banners up outside the shop saying winner in 2000 and whatever, undefeated, and I think that's great as well.
Yeah.
But what about somebody like myself that owns a brand, Our Plaice, and then we fall in we then open up another brand called the Chip Shed or whatever it might be, and we want to get the best out of that business. We want to take it forward. We want to, enter competitions, be the best at what we do, and tell other people in that area, look, we've won the regional award for this or the national award for that, or whatever category you enter, whether it's best takeaway, best restaurant. Why would you not do that? It's a great way to promote your business.
I think there's always been like an ambiguous figure of let's say 10,000 fish and chip shops, and the awards generally get hundreds of entrants, and it's just an absolute shame that not more people get involved.
Well, that's maybe where I think Seafish need to look at it and give it a really good shake up. To be fair, it does need looking at. They need to get more shops taking part and participating. Whether they go back to what we talked about earlier on, get their customers to participate and do it like that and nominate them, as opposed to the shop owners putting their own names forward.
Well, I suppose these days we don't need slips; you can do it online.
Absolutely,
and that would really cut out a lot of this sort of the old issue that we spoke about, which was sitting there with a phone book. They don't really exist anymore. Anyway.
I mean, we both know there are shops out there that are good enough of winning the region that don't enter. I don't know why that is. Perhaps they just want to stay under the radar and not be high profile.
I think it's multiple things. I think when I'm out, and I think sometimes there's a confidence issue. I think sometimes some shops think I'm not good enough. I'll never win. And I think recently there was a poll on Facebook, and it said why don't you enter? So I think there was a majority of people that put, well, I'll never win, will I? And you think well, now there's more chance of ever winning something, because back in your day, and it wasn't that long ago, but how many categories was there in 2004?
I think there were probably about 10, not as many as what there are now.
And I think now there's 18. So someone can win something.
Of course they can.
So I think that, but I see a lot of great shops, and I think that, and some of them never enter, and they do genuinely say, but I'll never win.
But it's not about winning, that being the number one. It's about perhaps being the best you can be in your area. And why would you not want to be the best you can be in your area? And it's sort of two fingers up to the local competition just to re-endorse what you know about your own business, that you are the best in your area. Yeah. And for that, you will get an uptake in turnover for your business. So whatever you invest into your business, whether you buy new fridges or you buy a new frying range, or whether you have a little bit of a revamp, new signage, whatever it might be, to get yourself to win the best you can be in your area, well, why not? What's wrong with that?
Yeah. I think there is multiple reasons, but I would like to see more people entering. I think they do really well at it, and it's fresh names in the award pot as well. I think that it shows that there's other people, and I think sometimes in our industry, people think there is a clique, because it's always the same names that pop up all the time. But I think that if those people that should enter or say those things, they should enter, and that sort of gets rid of that perception, in my view.
Yeah, but I mean, well, if they're listening to this podcast, I can't, I've said it once already. Why would you not get involved? Why would you not do it's the best format you can ever use to increase your turnover. That's
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah, a friend of mine rang me the other week and he said, I'm not happy about such and such winning, cod scallops in Nottingham. And I said, well, did you enter? And he goes, no, I don't enter. And I was like, there you go then, you got no right to moan. Like, and he laughed about it. He was all right about it. He goes, no, I ain't got, I shouldn't have a leg to stand on. But,
well, I was lucky enough to go and eat at the cod scallops about 6 weeks before they won, and I'd put them down as the winners before the awards, and I can honestly say that the setup they've got there is they're worthy winners.
Yeah.
They do a great product. He's a very slick operator. You wouldn't want them to be anything other than the best, really, because, when we won, people walked through the front door of the shop and you could just tell certain people they'd made their mind up they weren't going to enjoy the experience. They weren't going to enjoy the customer service. They weren't going to enjoy the food. They'd made their mind up because it was just like, oh, this can't be the best. If this is the best, why should this be the best? How have they won that? My local shop's much better than this. They made their mind up when they walked through the door that they weren't going to enjoy it.
I think fish and chips is pretty unique in that everyone's already got their favourite.
Yeah.
So regardless of what you won, people are still like, well, I've got my favourite. And they're then comparing you against their favourite.
Yeah, I mean, some of that a lot of it is down to regional variations, i.e., whether they cook in a certain fry medium or whether it's cod or whether it's haddock, whether they blanch a chip or whether they cook a chip right the way through. Some people like mushy peas with it, some people like curry. So it's down to all those regional variations, I think, of whether you... people tell me, they say, the best fish and chips we ever had was by the seaside. And you think, actually, no, it wasn't. It was the experience. It was the fact that you weren't at work, the fact that you got time off, the fact you were really relaxed, the fact that the sun was shining, and perhaps that you eat the fish and chips straight away.
Yeah.
That's why the best fish and chips you'll ever... I mean, some of the worst fish and chips I've ever had have been at the seaside. I watched one guy take a frozen Plaice fillet straight out the freezer and lob it in the pan. And I'm looking out the back of his shop and you could see the quay and you can see fishing vessels and you're just thinking, that fresh, really?
Yeah.
Straight out the straight out the freezer into the pan.
I think I think I don't know, for me, I've always said I prefer my fish and chips immediately. Straight, as let it drain off and on a plate. I've never really been a fan of it sort of wrapped up. Ever really. I don't really like fish and chips wrapped up.
No, everybody likes it different, don't they?
No, exactly. So what was it like being sort of like, what was your experience like being like the National Federation of Fish Friers president? Because you were that for 6 years.
It was all a bit weird still, really, because what happened was, not a couple of years after we'd won the award, the then president at the time invited me to come along to head office in Leeds and... become a board member, if you like. They call them executive councillors, but I prefer the name board member. So when I got there, just sort of knew a few faces around the table and exchanged pleasantries. And at that very first meeting, the person that invited me onto the board was then sacked and given a vote of no confidence. And they actually asked me to vote, and I clearly declined. I just said, well, I don't know enough about the situation or the circumstances of what went on, so... I'm not voting, I'm going to abstain.
Talk about an awkward first day.
It was very, very awkward, and at the time, Federation House and the way it was being run in Leeds was disappointing, to say the least, However, what I would say about the National Federation of Fish Friers, if you talk to the National Federation of Fishmongers, for instance, they would love what we've got. The Federation is something... we're lucky to have. At the time when I very first got involved, however, it was very dated. It was very much stuck in the 1970s. I was quite shocked by it all, if I'm honest. It was not run professionally. The board members a lot of them had retired, so they weren't current. The training school was okay. It needed revamping. So, I dragged it very quickly, kicking and streaming through the 70s, 80s, 90s into to what it is today, with the help of a lot of help from other board members. I won't name names in case I forget anybody, but you all know who you are. Help me bring it to where it is today, you know.
Was it so? So when everyone, and I was probably one of these guys that said, "Oh, it's an old boys' club." It was then.
Very much so.
But if you look at it now, it's just completely not at all, is it? It's like chalk and cheese, isn't it? Really.
It is. It's as I say, it was treading water for too long. There hadn't been the little improvements that you need, i.e., a lick of paint. It was very, very old fashioned, and as you described it, an old boys' club. They had when they had an annual general meeting, it used to last for days at a time, and when people walked up at the AGM to address the room, it was, my name is so-and-so, I'm from area number da-da-da, and it took too long, Stelios. It was just really archaic and very, very slow. Although, what I would say is it's a fantastic heritage. It's something that we should be very, very proud of.
Yeah, no, definitely, because they are there. They are something that, like you said, a lot of other industries don't have. They're not perfect. Nobody is, or no organisation is. But I think that
No, but it's let's say, for instance, we need a federation. We need somebody that, if there is a breaking story in the media, we need a go-to person. It can't be somebody that's an independent. It can't be somebody that's talking from their own point of view. It has to be official, and that's what the NFFF stands for.
Yeah.
It is there to protect and promote, and we certainly do promote the industry, and I have done for hundreds of years. Protect, they protect members. They don't protect non-members. So my opinion is really everybody that owns a fish and chip shop should put their hand in the back pocket and get behind the federation, because God forbid one day, if there was a really terrible breaking news story that decimated fish and chips, where would we all be left? What would we be doing? I couldn't earn my living elsewhere. I couldn't become a bricklayer because I don't have that skill set. So what people need to think about is, when they own a fish and chip shop, it's a bit like, you wouldn't go and get in a car, would you, and drive a car without having a few lessons and passing a test?
Yeah.
So, why would you think that you can open and run a fish and chip shop from scratch, not having any formal training, not being a member of the federation, somebody to fall back onto? You're going to have a crash in that car, whether it's, you mess the product up, whether you don't do things at the right time, whether it's employment law. The cost of the federation is cost neutral as long as you use everything that's on offer. If you join, you've got your roundel in the window, you've got your certificate, you've got 24-hour advice, you've got somebody there. If push comes to absolute shove, all these people on Facebook that give you advice that it's not always correct, it's certainly not always best practice, what the advice that they're giving you. I squirm at it sometimes. I never get involved, I never comment, because you're sticking your head above the parapet to be shot at. Somebody always knows better than you, but you can't. Nobody knows better than best practice, do they? So, for all those reasons, if you are a member and you get the most out of it that you possibly can, it's almost cost neutral. It's a daft thing not to be part of it. And people that knock it, quite frankly, they really don't know what they are talking about.
I think one of the things I've always said I'd like to see the NFFF do, and this is based on what you just said anyway, but I'd like to see them be more proactive as a lobby group. However, that all depends on funds. And these people that you see it all the time, why don't the NFFF do this, and why don't they do this, and why don't they do that? And it's quite frankly, nobody wants to say it out loud, but it's because the funds aren't in place. And the funds aren't in place because everyone's not a member for something that protects everybody. And I saw someone say the other week, well, why should I be a member when the guy down the road isn't? And I was like, it's not one of those organisations. It's a benefit system where you get benefits for being a member. So it doesn't matter whether the guy or woman down the road is a member or not.
They won't be protected though by the federation. If something did happen, some breaking story, whether it be acrylamide or whatever it might be, some really bad breaking story that harmed their business, they'd soon want to be a member. I was
going to say they're often the ones that then moan that they wasn't represented.
Yeah. I mean, they do. The federation does lobby and has lobbied. They do it very quietly. Say, for instance, with the VAT, with the sausage guy in Germany, when all that was going on, and they did do the best that they can. You can't get government and MPs to change their mind overnight. You just can't do it. It's got to be a slow process. I agree with you, having a fund and the budget to do it. However, there is an office there. There are 4 or 5 staff. They do run a training school. They do look after the members, and all that does. There is a cost element to that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, what would you say were your sort of best or worst moments at the NFFF?
There weren't any bad moments. I'll start with the positive ones. So, obviously, it was going to go under still, if I'm honest. It was when I first got there. It was going completely the wrong way, and it would have gone. Federation would have gone completely. It was that close. It was, yeah. They were up for selling the freehold. They were up for handing the notices out to the staff. It really was in a quite a bad place. Really, it had got no drive, and along with Bill Crook, Andrew's dad, who sadly passed away. There was a point where they'd pushed him out, and I spent seems like 6 or 8 weeks on the phone, constantly talking to suppliers and distributors, the owners of the companies, and saying, look, Federation's in a bad place, we need to support it, will you help? And I managed to convince Bill not to leave. He went on then and became president. We started to build some solid foundations for the Federation. My main thing was to leave it in a better place than I found it. That's
considering
what I wanted
you sort
to
of
do.
got thrust into the president position, which is something I didn't quite realise, although I knew about it, but I didn't realise the sort of the toll it maybe took on you.
Yeah, it was. It was weird, really, because Bill asked me to become vice president, which I was happy to do because I was supporting Bill. Bill was a distinguished older gentleman. And he got time to go to all the meetings, which I hadn't at the time because I was still frying and running my own business. I mean, sadly, just before Bill died, I think it was early 2011, my own father, he took his own life. So
just take a moment, mate. There's no rush.
It was... It's quite a sad story, really. He committed suicide, and it left me and my family in quite a bad place, really.
Just take a moment, mate. It's okay. There's no need to rush.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was bloody hell. It was quite difficult still, really, because when you lose your dad and you're a dad yourself, you've got to sort of grow a pair of big kahunas and carry on. And I did.
How did you manage to juggle all those roles? So new president, father, loss of father, how do you do all of this?
Well, like I say, with the help of everybody else around me, I mean, the board at the time were great. Caroline was friends, family, all instrumental, really. It was tough. When Bill died as well, it was like, bloody hell. Right, Greg, you're expected to become president, and it was thrust on me, really. It was a great honour. It was something that I wanted to do. It was a brilliant honour to do it, and I grabbed it like I do with most things. You grab it by the scruff of the neck, and you just take it on, don't you? I was quite a determined person, really. When it comes down to it, when you've got to do something, you just you do it. Very proud of. When you ask the question, what your things, my regrets with the Federation, I don't have any regrets. What I would have liked to have done with it was really, I'd like to have moved it. I'd like to have moved it within Leeds, and built a more visible NFFF training school. So on a main road, something where people would drive past and, oh, God, look, there's a fish and chip school there. They're actually learning people how to cook fish and chips because it is a career. I've made a career out of it, and we've got lots and lots of young fish friers that have gone on and opened their own shops and bought their own shops and run really good fish and chip shops. It's been around for, 160 years, is it this year, they say?
Yeah.
So, it's a real career path, and I think it wasn't a regret, but I wish we'd have got the finances and the funding to to have been able to move it to a more prominent position with its own car park, and perhaps have it really a fully functional fish and chip shop that was open, because that's one thing. It's all very well a training school environment. It is like going to school, but you know what it's like. You actually put somebody into a full working fish and chip shop. It's very different when you've got customers in front of you and you really got to start moving queues and getting people served.
And also the benefit to that is that it's a trading business. You know, when memberships are sort of slowing down for argument's sake, you've got a business that's bringing in people. And but I think one argument to that, and I'm in favour of that, of what you just said. I love the idea of that. But I think some people's argument is, but you can't have the Federation competing with another fish and chip shop. And I don't know. My counter argument to that is, buy an existing fish and chip shop. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't personally. You wouldn't have to open it on a Friday evening. It would just been done in the
Monday to Thursday
lunchtime.
Yeah.
So it would be you'd just be simulating the business, if you like. It would have just been for the good of the students. However, I mean, the NFFF do offer people to go in and I've done it myself, and it's a great experience, is to go and work with somebody that's opening a fish and chip shop for the first time, hold the hands and just show them the right way. I mean, that it's great for the new owners, but it's something I've enjoyed and got great satisfaction from.
I think you're right, though. At the very least, a nice imposing big property. Imagine an old pub on the side of a busy road that says Fish and Chip School. I think that's, for me, that just all that traffic. It's an advert, isn't it?
Andrew Crook, are you listening?
I'm sure he'll listen. So, did you find that the NFFF evolved quite restrictive then? And obviously there's a reason why it's restrictive. And that's to stop people from just making, autocratic decisions. Did you find it quite claustrophobic, or?
It's a funny thing, the Federation. It gets into your blood, really. You have to learn how it works, and I can see why people have come along and been part of it, come for a while and then moved on. It's not for them, because when you run your own business style, you can make a decision instantly, can't you? Or certainly sleep on it, and the next day you make the decision, you implement it, and it's done. With the Federation, you can't use the word autocratic. You cannot make your own decisions because it's not what you think. It's got to be a joint decision, and it's got to be a considered decision across a board. So it does take time. In between board meetings, you might table an idea and then you might carry it on through. So it does move a little bit slower. I've lost my drift. So what was the question again?
It was basically, have you found it quite restrictive? The NFFF, and you said, well, essentially it's in your blood. So... but I think you're getting at is that it's not a normal business, but it's not quite an organisation either. It's somewhere in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in between the two, and I do think that's one of the main reasons why people have gone and they've been part of it, and then it's not for them, because you can't run it like it is your own business. You can't run it as an individual. You can't. It's not possible.
You can't just shoot from the hip. You can't just say, I'm going to make this,
and rightly or wrongly, sometimes people don't like it, and I've certainly been criticised for it. You have to give the politician's answer.
Yeah.
You have to be seen to maybe agree with somebody that you might not, your own personal opinion could be very, very different. However, you give the politician answer. I mean, this is where the Federation are very good, is dealing with the media and handling the media. And going back to the Fish and Chip Shop of the Year competition, all the winners after me, they've all been worthy winners because they can handle a microphone.
Yeah.
When it's thrust in front of them, they can say the right things, they can give the right messages that you want to hear, that yes, it is sustainable, yes, it can be healthy, yes, it will be here in the future, all the things that the industry wants to hear. And don't forget, all the non-members of the Federation, the Federation is protecting and promoting the brand of fish and chips for them.
Yeah. And you were also pretty instrumental, or the team around you as well, because I think you was the president, but to bring in the Quality Award, which was then going to be sort of set aside, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the steering committee for the Quality Award before the Federation took ownership of it. They asked me to go when it was Seafish and in various guises. I've been doing that for such a long time. And people say, oh, it's an award. Is it an award? Isn't it an award? It's not really an award. It's a good name. It's an audit. It's not something that you're actually, you attain it. You're not given it.
Yeah.
There is a cost to it. It's a good cost. It's, for me, the quality award, the guidelines to it, the best practice, it's perfect. That's how to run your business. If you could work to that level every day to the standard of a quality award sharp, you'd be operating at competition level as well. And if you could do that all of the time, you'd be absolutely brilliant. It would tire you out. You'd be worn out.
Well, you don't have to ramp up and ramp down every time the awards come. You can set systems.
You're at it, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're on it.
And I think that's one of the things. The only thing I've always said about the award, the quality award, that is that I just think it should be quality audit. And then it's a bit like.
Oh, I hear you, but unfortunately, the biggest bugbear with anything is the fact the media's portrayal of everything, and I'll go on to that in a minute. But to answer the question about the quality, but it won't really stand another revamp, if you like.
Yeah.
Trying to get the public to understand what the quality award is hard enough.
Yeah.
Everybody gets when you used to have a plumber and they were Corgi registered or gas safe. You get it. If ever we could get the general public to understand what a quality award holding fish and chip shop is, it would drive more footfall to them, less to the other shops. It would increase the quality of the food, the quality of the service, the experience, everything about it, just by having the better shops having quality awards. It's like Michelin star, that is our Michelin star, if you like, having a quality award.
Yeah.
It's that level. It's another level up. You can criticise it. You say, oh, well, I don't want a gold, I don't want a silver, I don't want a bronze, or I don't want it at all. That's fine.
Yeah.
But please don't criticise people that actually pay to have a quality award assessment. It's fantastic.
No, definitely. And like you say, it keeps you on your toes.
It does. It's like an EHO plus times 10.
Well, they say, don't they, if you've got a quality award, you'll get a 5-star for 5-point quality. EHO score.
You should do. I mean, you're operating over and above. I mean, I'm still learning now. Still, I'm check it systems. We're using those in our shops. I mean, EHO coming into your business and looking at something like that, it's a big, massive tick, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know yourself, once the Environmental Health Officers start with one tick, they'll carry on ticking.
Yeah.
They start with the cross, you've had it.
It's true.
Duck, duck, dung, 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 all the way down. And before you know it, you're down to 3-star scores on the doors or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. So you started your life in a family business, and then you sort of left that and have now created another family business. What is different to the one from previous, or what have you just learnt to deal with as you've gone along?
Well, I've got 4 children, and it's funny because being a little bit my daughters all sort of male chauvinist, old-fashioned, whatever you want to call it. I always thought the lads would come into the business, and you always puff your chest out. I think, well, my lads are going to become fish fryers. My daughters won't. They'll just have kids and da-da-da-da-da. Please don't anybody take offence at that, because, I was born in 1965, for God's sake, so I'm quite old. Not past it, but old. So consequently, I actually thought that my 2 sons would be the ones that would lead the way, and little did I know that the girls haven't done too bad out of it either, So Victoria runs her own business now. Extremely proud of that. Lydia is involved in Our Plaice. My son Charlie works across, anywhere he wants to work really, but he'll work at the chip shed. And then my eldest son George, he does work in a family business, but he's we call him MM. He's the maintenance manager. So George can fry, very good fish fryer, and knows the business inside out, back to front. So, but he's come into it from a different route, really. He's revamping. We have some bedrooms above the one site down in Bourton on the water, so he's revamping those, and we're doing them all as bed and breakfast lets. So he's busy doing that. Occasionally he'll get called from upstairs, downstairs to rumble a few potatoes if the spud bloke hasn't turned up or what have you. But they're all involved in the family business. It's great still, it's funny when you see like other friends of ours come from, they come to visit us, and we're all sat there and they can't believe that even on a Sunday afternoon we're all still discussing fish and chips. 'Cause, for God's sake, I've got Craig Buckley, James Holston, my two son-in-laws. I mean, why would we not be talking about fish and chips on a Sunday afternoon? You know, we are a fish and chip family.
No, definitely. And it's amazing because even your son-in-laws to be are in the business as well.
They are, yeah.
You know, one's got his own business and one works for you. And it just shows that it is a fish and chip family, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, it's a great way to make a living, I think. It's, you know, meeting people, cooking lovely fish and chips, serving people. It's wonderful. Love it.
I think to those that are listening, and I hope that people who listen to this podcast get how sort of interesting and diverse the fish and chip industry is, but I think you sort of make that clearer. You know, that, you know, there is more people out there, like that they're all doing it at a good level that you can be friends with. You don't all have to be at each other's throats, you know? No. I mean, it's been said before on the podcast that when you've got people from other areas, like I can talk to people from around the country and share knowledge, share purchase prices of things, and have a good chat. You know, I don't expect to do that with the guy down the road who owns the fish shop down the road or up the road, because they're competitors in terms of, you know, we're all vying for the same customers. So, you know, it's a great industry in that sense. But I listen to, going back to the kids, you know, I listen to my kids, and they're saying to me, "Dad, you need to do this, you need to do that," which is great. And they don't seem to be listening to me, but I know they are when I'm talking about what to do and how to do things. You know, like, you know, one of them said the other day, "What do you think about such and such a shop in such and such an area?" You know, and that's your advice, Sal. But I'm listening to them as well. They're telling me about things like the check it system that I mentioned earlier on. You know, Dad, you've got to get down this click and collect. So we're listening and implementing that as well. The downside to having a family and being in the same business as you're aware is that you do tend to you bring it home with you, don't you, as well? So on a bad day, when you've all had a bad day at work, you're all at each other's throats at home. So my mother used to say, "Don't bring it back today." You know, she's I don't want you talking about fish and chips on your day off. So this is what happens, isn't it? It's the risk you take, isn't it? Essentially, that, you know, that are we always? You know, it's not always going to be rosy, you know. So what would you say, like? You were saying earlier that, you know, one of the biggest challenges, like when you were starting to get going, was like telling your dad about advertising and all of that. Like, what would you say the biggest changes in the industry that you've seen since you started?
Changes, really. It is you've got to get the customer now what they want. You know, if they want the food delivered to them to the door and they want to ring up, pay for it on an app, that's what we've got to do. The customer's king at the minute. You know, you have to do it. I'm not saying that traditional fish and chip shops, you know, we are. What you've got to not forget is we are the main focus on the high street now. We're losing a lot of retail shops on the high street. Post offices are going, banks are going, pubs to a certain degree, although they're fighting back with real ale. Places are doing quite well. I mean, you know, it's great to go and bump into somebody you haven't seen for a while, and you're going to bump into them in the chip shop now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because that's the last place to go and bump into somebody, or you haven't seen somebody for a while. So the high street still needs that. You still need to go and talk to people. But I do agree with the way it's going, that click and collect, people haven't got the time or the inclination. I mean, years ago, I wouldn't sell fish and chips. I'd sell Gregg Howard.
Yeah.
You know, it was the fish and chips came with it, but they came to see you. You know, and everybody will say that. It was like, you know, you go and you'd sell yourself all day long, wouldn't you?
A bit like a market trader to some degree, isn't it?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. You'd expect it's like a restaurateur, you know, or a good chef. I mean, years ago, we used to take my dad down to Cornwall. So we used to go and eat at Rick Stein's when he worked there. You know, I'm going back 30 years ago, and he'd come out and he'd sign a book. It was great. You know, you went to Rick Stein's to see Rick Stein. I mean, he wouldn't be there now.
No.
You know, because he's done really well for himself, and he doesn't need to be there. He can pay somebody else to do it. But I am a firm believer still, though. We have got Our Plaice on the high street, and we do still have that thing of people want to go in and converse with other people.
It's just harder to shout through that noise now, I suppose. But I suppose, and rather than selling yourself, you're probably selling Our Plaice or the Chip Shed more so? Like, especially because you can't always be there.
Yeah, I mean, contradicting what I've just said slightly, you have to make this decision when you open more sites and multiple sites. If I was just running and operating one shop, and I know that business would do slightly better than what it does do, but you have to learn to say, well, step back and say, actually, it might lose a little bit, but it won't lose a lot, as long as you don't step back and step away and keep away. If you step back and you're running it and you're still there and you're still looking after it and making sure that the product's right and the service is right, that will allow you then to go on and open multiple sites, which that's what we wanted to do. It's funny how things happen in life. You know, when I was the president of the federation, a guy rang me up and he said, Greg, I know you're president of the federation. I've rang the offices up in Leeds. They can't help me, but I want to open a fish and chip shop in Japan. And I said, you what? A fish and chip shop in Japan? How's that going to work then? And he said, well, if you come and meet me in Oxford, he said, I want to talk to you about it. So, you know, curiosity gets the best of you. So I met this guy in Oxford, and he's there with a Japanese man that didn't say a word. So I just assumed he couldn't speak English, you know. But all this guy did was listen. And he listened and he listened and he listened. And we talked and we talked and we talked. We shook hands and we went away. And then he rang me again some months later and said, are you still interested in doing this thing in Japan? And I said, well, I'd love to help you. You know, that's what I like to do. So we opened the very first fish and chip shop in Tokyo, in a place called Roppongi, which has the largest population of expats in Tokyo. So we did that, which meant travelling over to Japan, and I designed the fish and chip shop for them. You know, and it was a great experience of doing that. And the guy I met was a young guy called Dan Tutor, and that's who I went into business with the Chip Shed. You know, eventually that's how that came about. So it's funny, from doing one thing, how another thing comes up. Yeah. You know, we had no intention of going into business together. We looked at the site we've got in Warwick actually. We looked at that site, and that site I'd found that for Mailings, who are the company in Japan, to open a fish and chip shop in the United Kingdom and run as Mailings in the UK, because that's the owner, Shingo-san, that's what he wanted to do. It didn't come about. It didn't happen for various reasons. And I just said to Dan, I said, well, why don't we do it ourselves? You know, it's too good an opportunity to miss. I'd always admired this little tiny fish and chip shop, black and white building. You know, when I'd gone down to steering committees for Seafish, we'd driven past it many times and looked at it. I thought, that's really pretty. I'd like to own that one day. And I found out through one of the catering companies, Aston's in Birmingham, they said that, it's for sale, Greg, you should go and look at it. It's my brother-in-law's shop. And I did. And, you know, we bought it and we've never looked back, really. That was 3.5 years ago. So about 2016, 17, something like that. We opened the one in Warwick.
It's the one in Westgate, isn't it?
Westgate Street. Yeah. And it was the usual story. The guy had it for years, and you know it had been. It needed some love putting back into it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
that shop needed a lot of love.
And we put a lot of love back into it, and we just said, let's give it a go, and we'll have some fun.
I remember, what was his name? Chris. Yeah, I went to see him one year.
Yeah.
And it was snowing outside, and his potatoes were outside in that courtyard with snow on them. And I just thought, oh God, someone could do a great job here, and you obviously have.
We have, It was a lovely, really quaint little shop. There's a little small restaurant at the back. And
I don't think he ever realised what he had.
No, it was very peculiar, really, because people say, or people in the industry say anyway, that they all quote this £10,000 a week shop and all the rest of it, you know, that's a good shop. And he had got that shop, as you say. It potentially, it was wonderful. It's so quaint. And Dan and I looked. Well, I found the location and showed him, and he said, "That's lovely. It's brilliant. We can have some fun." So we got a load of wood. We sat down and started putting wood up everywhere, you know, and we'd come up with a name. We'd banded some names about for the business, for the new business, and he came up with he said, "Oh, what about the chip shed?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not so sure about that. Shed seems to me like cobwebs and old tools." And then I just thought, you know what, that is a good name. It's quite a name for now. So much as Our Plaice was a great name in the 80s, it was a bit. It's a bit play on words. The chip shed still is very much for now.
Yeah,
you know. So when we opened the one at Warwick, went really well. He lives down in a place called Horsley, which is in the South Cotswolds, now near Stroud. And the local fish and chip shop to him had gone out of business. And it was weird because the year he got married, I'd driven past the chip shop in Minchinhampton, and it was absolutely beautiful chip shop. Beautiful, stunning looking, typical Cotswold building. And again, I drove past it and thought, oh, that's lovely. I'd like to own that one day. And sure enough, he said, oh, it's up for sale. And I said, well, at the time, we were focusing more on Bourton on the Water and opening a shop there. And he said, oh, we could just sneak it in, couldn't we? It wouldn't hurt, would it? And Dan's got he hasn't got any idea really of how hard it is to run a fish and chip shop in terms of staffing it and so on. He's the marketing guy and the ideas man, if you like. So the following year after we did Warwick, I think 2017, 2018 we opened the one at Minchinhampton, and then last year 2019 we opened the one at Bourton on the Water. So that's how that came about, really, just through a chance meeting and a phone call with him. Oh, I forgot as well, we did open a fish and chip shop in Paris, in District 8, on the Square de Madeleine. Okay. And that was the Japanese, the Japanese backer. It's his ex-wife.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she decided she could see what they were doing at Malin's in Japan and what we'd done with the chip shed, and she thought that's really cool. So they have a fish and chip shop over there now. We imported an electric frying range from Martin Edwards Frankfurt, got that shipped over for them, and they're doing a great job.
So you mentioned it just a little bit. How do you find juggling staffing for these ventures? Like, 'cause obviously that's the trickiest bit these days.
It is. I mentioned Phil Blakeman earlier on, and the way he trains people and how he invests in people. It's quite weird. It is hard because people don't stick in one job anymore. They don't. There's no loyalty as such. Although I've got one girl that's worked for me for over 25 years, but that is extremely rare these days. You know, people jump about, especially chefs. They'll give it a couple of years in a job and then they move on. You know. I think it's getting the right person. If you can get a people person, you can train them to do the other part of the job. You can train people how to fry fish and chips. You can train people to do front of house. It's no good having a miserable person that doesn't like people, a bit like the guy off Heidi High, you know, the one who the Punch and Judy bloke who hated kids. I mean, why on earth would you do a job, Punch and Judy job? They hate kids, you know. So why on earth would you do a customer-facing job dealing with the public when you don't like people? Yeah. So for that instance, it's if you've got the right type of people, you can mould them and get them to do the job. They could be the best chefs in the world.
So sort of personality before experience, really.
Correct, yeah. That's my take on it.
Yeah, because you can train them to do the job good if they're nice.
Yeah, you can train them to do a job really well. You know, if you care and nurture products and you want to create a good experience. It's dead simple. It's just it's three things, isn't it? It's a clean environment. It's a really nice, clean, smart looking environment. As long as you get the food right, and then customer service. Yeah. You know?
No, of course. And how have you managed with, like, obviously you've probably seen cheaper prices in your day, but how have you managed with the price increases of late?
Well, over the years, I mean, as I said earlier, Dad started buying frozen at sea fish in the early 1980s, and it was probably about £65 for a £45 case of fish. And excuse me, in 2008, when the Icelandic banks went, fish absolutely plummeted. It was, I think it dropped to 68 quid a box, 70 quid a box. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, fish was cheap, but customers were scarce. Yeah. So
we didn't get to enjoy that one.
We didn't really enjoy it, as well as what we should have done because, as I say, you know, credit crunch hit. I just ate my shop in Kidderminster actually 2 weeks before the credit crunch, and I remember writing at the top of the book "Credit Crunch CC," and I thought, "What credit crunch? I never saw that coming or heard of that before." So yeah, fish was cheap then. I mean, at the moment, fish is really mega expensive. It's the most expensive we've ever known. I think that people, the fish suppliers, the wholesalers really need to be careful that they don't price fish off the menu, because, you know, if you're in a price sensitive area, people will come in and look at cod and chips at £7.50, but they can have pie and chips for £5, sausage and chips for £4. You know, I think we need to be really careful as an industry that fish will only stand a certain price. If it goes above it's £159 at the moment. If it got to £200, which people have said it had or it might, God forbid it should, they need to be mindful that fish and chip shops will not be buying as much fish.
Yeah.
Fact. You know, I listen to the same goes with potato prices. You know, what's happened? There's no pilot high, sell it cheap. There's no cheap as chips sayings anymore. They've completely gone. Nobody's piling chips up. When potato go to £14 a bag, we cut our portions, you know. Our portions have always been quite tight in our shops anyway. We give enough for one person. A large bag of chips is for a hungry person. It's not for two people or three people to share. But what you'll find is the potato merchants, they've got to be careful, because they're saying, oh, there's not so much chips being sold in chip shops. Well, there are the same amount, but they're smaller portions. So consequently, instead of ordering 70 bags a week, if you're clever and you get your portions right, you can order 60 bags a week. Yeah. So just be careful, guys. You know, keep putting your fish prices up, keep putting your potato prices up, and I hope that they are listening still. I'm sure they are. That you've got to be really careful, because you will price yourself out of the market.
I think there's 2 points to that. So I get the Caterer magazine, and I always see that they're constantly pushing, the Norwegian Seafood Council, if that's what you call it, are constantly pushing frozen at sea fish to restaurants, pubs, and saying, do frozen at sea cod for fish and chips, specifically fish and chips. And it's like they're trying to target a new market, because the fish and chip market is probably thinking, oh, you know, we're not paying that, or at least we don't want to pay that. And I get it. That's the Norwegian Seafood Council's job, to get more money for their product. I get it. And I did mention it to Andrew, and he was just a bit like, oh, I'll keep my eye on it. I don't know if he did. He's listening, so I don't know if he did. But then from the other side, I met a guy from the Faroe Islands, you know, and he genuinely felt concerned. Like, I mean, like when I was talking to him about it, you know, it was on Facebook, we were chatting privately, and he goes, you know, of course I care, like that fish is expensive, you know, but does that translate to anything, you know, after that? Like, yeah, he cared, but he still took the money. So I don't know, it's a tough one, isn't it? Like,
well, bread and butter, Stelios, you know, the fish and chip shop industry, potatoes produced in the UK, we use 30% of the potatoes that are used in the United Kingdom in fish and chip shops. Fish that's imported, you know, the vast majority of fish and chip shops, 95% of fish and chip shops are using frozen at sea. So they just need to be careful. It's all very well opening up other markets, but fish and chips is the stalwart of where you would want to put fish into. Just because we won't pay it, or are not prepared to pay it, or edgy about paying it, take it somewhere else, but you're not going to sell as much.
Yeah, they've not got volume.
No. You know, look at Pucker Pies. I mean, I hope I don't get sued by Pucker Pies, but they've well and truly sold the fish and chip shops up the river, in my opinion. This might sound controversial, but you can now buy, Pucker Pies used to just supply fish and chip shops, and maybe Booker or Macro or whatever you call it, but now they're putting pies into supermarkets for £1 or £1.50, whatever it is. So how can we sell the same product for £2.60, £3, whatever you're selling it for? It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, because you're trying to get the value of £3 when they're selling it for 90p. You know, and how do you build
They've got to heat it up.
Yeah.
You've got, you know, we've got to heat it up and charge VAT. It's the same product, essentially. You have the convenience of going into a fish and chip shop and being able to buy it with chips, as opposed to sticking it in an oven at home. You know, you've got that luxury, but at what cost?
I remember their argument once when I met the brothers. I was young, but I remember saying to them, like, do you think this is a wise idea? And from their point of view, it was, because they've probably quadrupled their turnover over the years. But I think that their argument was that, but, we now produce more, which means we can keep the prices lower. But the prices have crept up over the years anyway. So, but pucker pies is always going to be a contentious one, I think.
Yeah, indeed. That's just one example.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. No. So,
please don't sue me.
No, they won't. They probably don't even listen to this. So let's say if we start looking at wrapping this up, what would you say your biggest challenges in life have been so far?
Biggest challenges? Highs and lows of life. Making sure that you learn lessons from mistakes. That's one good thing. Unless you make mistakes, you can't really learn a lesson. So, my ultimate challenge really is being honest and true with myself. Sticking to what you know. Don't try and mess about with what we do too much. Don't try and be a fancy restaurateur when you're a restaurant that sells good quality fish and chips. Stick to what you know. Stick to your market. Stick to your audience, and you'll do well from that.
Sort of stay in your lane.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
that makes sense. And over the years, who's been an inspiration to you? Would you say?
Oh God, so difficult.
It doesn't have to be one person.
well, it's not. First and foremost, you've got to say your parents, because they are the biggest influence on you throughout your life. So my dad, he just so happened to be a fish fryer as well, which was great. Learned a lot from him. Still, there's so many people, really. I mentioned Phil Blakeman earlier on with training. I got to know Phil really well. A lot of people that own the companies within our industry have been very helpful, very knowledgeable. You have to listen, you have to learn for what people tell you, what they say. But there's no one in particular.
Yeah.
I think when you run your own business, you have to be quite insular, independent, forthright, whatever you want to call it. I'm my own man. So I don't really look up to any one person individually.
I find it crazy when you said that 15 years you've been serving this guy and you didn't know who it was, and then you find out it's the owner of Dry White.
Yeah, it's quite weird. The relationship with Dry White is where I was born, literally. The front room. I was born in the front room of the house in Collegate, which is part of Haleshowen. And if you look on any top of any salt cellar, the words said Haleshowen and Dry White on the top. Well, that's where I was born. And Dry White, we were the closest fish and chip shop to Dry White, to the factory. So we had a customer who said he came into the shop for probably 10 or 15 years. And one day Mike Pilley was in the shop, and I think he was doing a quality award or doing some training or something years ago. And Mike's there, and he looked up and he went...
Probably still there now.
He probably is, yeah, with his magnet. The fridge seals are clean, Mike. So I lost my drift a bit. But yeah, so the guy comes in, and we used to call him the suit style, because back in the day then, we hardly had any customers. Everybody came in overalls. People worked, in factories and so on and so forth. And this guy used to come in his suit, quite, respected gentleman. And he followed me. He came to that one shop for 15 years that I had. And when I moved to the shop in Hagley, he reappeared there, and I thought, hello, sir, all right, yeah, how you doing? And it was always pleasantries and not too much conversation, because you have to get to know certain people want to chat, and they come for the night out, don't they? It's their night out, coming by and fish and chips. Other people want an acknowledgement, and some people just want to be left alone. They just want the food and go. Well, Kelvin fell sort of in between the acknowledgement thing of hello, and it was always pleasant, but it never went past that. And when Mike saw him, he said, that's Kelvin Lee there, And I went, who? And Mike actually thought I was joking. And I went, what are you on about? And he went, Kelvin, that's Briar's brother. And I said, is it? And he went, stop packing, Greg, stop it. I said, no, seriously. I said, we call him the suit, because he always comes in his suit. And I went over and I said, are you really Briar's brother? And he went, Kelvin very, very, very modestly just sort of nodded his head, and He never said a word.
Yeah.
All those years, just come in, and he was buying the food for their mum.
All right.
And up until she passed away quite recently, I think last year or the year before, they'd always come. They'd always come and bought the food, had the fish and chips, and quite a real compliment, really, because, I mean, I hold them in really high regard, that family, for what they've done for the industry, you know, especially with the Young Fish Fry of the Year.
Yeah, massively. I always thought that maybe Kelvin didn't like me, but I think he's just shy.
Very shy.
Yeah.
Painfully shy.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my drinking days, when I used to drink, I managed to get him to drink 3 pints of Stella at a bar one night. Oh, my God. I couldn't shut him up. And I then found out that we had a common interest in classic cars. He loves them. I've got classic cars as well. And when he found out that I got classic cars, he got classic cars. That was it. 3 pints of Stella later. God, my God. But he came down to breakfast the next morning. It was at Fish and Chip Awards, and he went, "Oh God, don't do that to me ever again."
Oh really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was absolutely hanging.
I wonder what it's like running a company like that. Like, as a proper institution, isn't it? Like, in our industry anyway. Like, and it's literally like he took it from his dad, and there was his grandfather as well, wasn't it, that started it. So that's a lot of pressure as well. Like,
Well, I remember his dad, and Briar's dad, and he had Mr. Lee. He had a gold Rolls Royce style, and he used to drive it up past where our family fish and chip shop was, in the front room of the house. Mr. Lee, Malcolm Lee, used to drive past in his gold Rolls Royce up the road, and it was. Back then, you didn't see many cars really, and the cars that you did see, they were all Austins and Morrises and Morris Minors and so on. There was you might see the odd Ford Granada. That was a king of the road type of thing. But he got Rolls Royce, gold Rolls Royce, amazing.
Wow, that's something. Like, we always say, like, back then, like, what it meant to buy a Mercedes. But what does it mean if you bought a Rolls Royce? That's something else.
That was another level, wasn't it?
But then back then, business people were shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
Not many people were business people. And that's probably what, if you said to him, "Oh, what do you do, Mr. Lee?" "I'm a businessman." You wouldn't have found out what business.
No.
Like,
No.
But I remember, like, I don't know, like, I remember when people talk about business people of that generation, it was just business. Oh, we don't talk about stuff like that.
I've always learned, mate, don't judge a book by its cover. Nope. Treat everybody the same.
Yeah,
I did it when I've done that all through my life. If you can treat people the same, whether they're spending a £5 or 50 quid with you, whether they look like a bloody whatever or they're coming in as business suit, treat them all the same, mate. Treat them all the same.
We're all going to end up in a ditch, aren't we? So
we're just passing through Stelios at the end of the day, mate. It's that's what it is. We're just passing through.
So on that note, what advice would you give anyone in the trade right now?
Interestingly, well, if you're new to the trade, you need to ride it out. It's tough at the minute. Margins are really tight, to say the least. There's still the trade there, so you can still do well at the moment. Obviously, Brexit is looming and hanging over everybody, so nobody knows what they're doing, what's going to happen there, how it's going to affect prices, and so on and so forth. But that's if you're new to the industry. If you're in the industry and you've been in the industry a long time, just keep doing what you're doing, stick it out. Keep concentrating on. I think quality is the key. I keep using that word, but quality food. Expensive food, cheap food is you throw away and you chuck it in the bin. That's expensive food. If you go out and buy fish and chips and they're crap and you just lob them in the bin, that's really expensive. If fish and chips are 7 or 8 quid and you really enjoy them, compared with Chinese, Indian, pound for pound, really, really good value for money. I'll leave you with this, Stel. What frustrates me the most about British people is why do we always bloody knock the things that we're good at? Fish and chips are a bloody institution, something to be proud of. And one of the NFF's big issues is that perception by the media. How do you change that? How do you get people to realise that a pint of beer's gone up, a loaf of bread's gone up, petrol, my God, petrol's gone through the bloody roof. I don't see people saying, "Oh, petrol's too expensive." Fish and chips at 8 quid a pop, great. We can all make our money. We can all live at 8 quid a pop, 7 quid a pop, 7.5 quid a pop. At £6 for fish and chips, you're not going to survive really at that. You're not. So That's one of my things is why do we always knock what we're really good at? Yet somebody like Eddie the Bloody Eagle Edwards, who hadn't really got much talent but had a go, I suppose, we'd celebrate him. We'd put him up there along with Frank Bruno and say, oh, he was brilliant. Well, Frank Bruno was a crap boxer, but we were really good at cooking fish and chips. We're really good at it. We should celebrate it more. And that's where the perception of what we do by the media, I mean, I've just dealt with an inquiry on the radio about batter and thick batter on fish and chips and how unhealthy people are saying it is and you shouldn't eat it and blah, 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 blah. Well, actually, if you do a good job, you can eat it and you can enjoy it and celebrate it.
Yeah, I agree massively. I think we need to be louder and prouder. I think that we sometimes in this industry also look at it as just a chippy. And I think that's the problem, that not just do the people that walk past it, but we need to be louder and prouder because we are doing something bigger and better than what people think.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's there to be celebrated. We're obviously talking to the converted, Yeah,
of course.
It's getting the British press to realise that what a good product it is.
I actually don't think they care. If they can create outrage about anything, that's all they care about. I think.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, it's not their job to promote us. It's our job to promote us, and I think that's the thing here.
Well, we never celebrate success either, do we? No. As British people, nobody likes to see anybody else do well. Well, I'm not like that. I think birds of a feather should flock together. If we're good at what we do, stick together.
Yeah. No, this is again, I always say this, but it's like, I think the British people don't like to see, any British people, even people that I know that are from the Cypriot background, they don't like to see success in their own communities. And I've seen it, But I think that whereas in America it's celebrated, if you drive a nice car, someone will pat you on the back a little bit and say, "What did you do?" So, what's your favourite book?
Well, nothing too inspirational, really. It's not going to be anything you're going to just sort of think, well, actually, from a business point of view, or you're going to learn anything from particularly. But a really good read is it's a book called Mr. Nice, and it's Howard Marks' book. So it's a good read, really good read. I recommend that you read it and enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah. Perhaps there's another really good one called Shantaram as well, which is based on a true story. Shantaram's good.
Okay. What's it about?
It's about a prisoner from New Zealand who escapes, runs away to India.
Wow.
He hides in the slums in India. Fabulous.
Wow,
Great.
Sounds good.
Shantaram.
And is there anything we haven't mentioned? Is there anything you're curious about? Anything that you like thinking about? What takes up your time?
What takes up my time? Well, I enjoy work. I still enjoy what I do. Outside of work, I really like family time. Very important when they're all at home, when you got your family around you, kids, grandkids. In-laws is, son-in-laws, great, love it. Daughter-in-laws even, nearly forgot. So, yeah, I really like what I do still. I'm very passionate about fish and chips, always will be.
Good.
It's a great way to earn a living, mate.
No, it is. And you got to meet me.
Absolutely, I forgot about that.
Well, look, mate, I just want to say thanks for your time today. And I think what I like about these podcasts is that I've known you for a long time, yet I knew nothing. And I think that is, it's something that I've started to figure out, after 40 odd of these episodes, that I've known people for such a long time, yet I know nothing.
Yeah, it's true. I've listened to them myself, and you learn about people's lives, and what do they say? What makes you bad makes you better, is it?
Definitely.
So, yeah.
All right, Greg. Well, I'll let you crack on.
Cheers. Thank you very
for your
much.
time, mate.
Thanks, Del.